You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 542, our coverage and breakdown of The Return, which is now the fourth episode of Season 3 of The Bad Batch. And a very poignant episode, once again, getting into the mind of Crosshair, and maybe some answers, some conversations that we were expecting to have. I don't know how I felt personally about those, but more on that here in a little bit, and we'll get Jonesy's opinion, who's with us tonight as well. Jonesy, welcome to the show. How are you doing tonight?
You know, personally, I feel good about you, Albert. So I just want to say that.
Yeah, that's always there.
I'm doing fantastic, man. I'm actually pretty satisfied with this episode. So
yeah.
I'm kind of, maybe not all the things we were hoping for, but you and I exchanged some text on this one. And basically it was what can we expect of these guys? This is about what we get for them. So what are you going to do, right? But no, I'm excited to talk about this one. It's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, it will be. Hey, before we get started, why don't you give some shout outs to some folks, specifically our Patreon members?
Yeah, thanks to all of our Patreon members over at cantinacast.com/Patreon, especially our now part of the tribe members, Rob, Mike, Lauren, Dante, Riss, Justin Jackson, Sharkman, Dan, Daz, Isabella, Uncle Leon, Josh, Jacob, and Rita Reborn. And then, of course, the Delusions of Grandeur members, Rod, CJ, Alex, Steve, and Daz. Thank you all so much for your contributions. If you're not a Patreon member, you can actually join Patreon and not pay $1. You can join the free side of it, and you'll see when we post things publicly, you'll get a little teaser about what's going on. So if you're curious about what's going on and how often we do things and what kind of content is out there, follow our social media, of course, at the Cantina Cast pretty much everywhere. But also, check out cantinacast.com/Patreon because you'll actually get a notification when things do get posted. If you're kind of curious, but you're not ready to, drop $1 or $2 over there, check it out and just see if it's for you or not. And we'd love just to have you part of the community.
Yeah, for sure. There's we'll be posting more there soon as well. So thank you guys. Thank you all of you for pledging the amounts that you do. Don't forget, we plugged this last week, and Steve, I meant to post your pictures that you sent me, and I haven't had a chance. I will get to those, buddy, but TeePublic has got a sale again for $16. So if you're interested in picking up some swag, specifically the Cantina Cast stuff, you can go out to cantinacast.com/shop or /store, because Jonesy's got you covered both ways.
That's right.
And that'll take you over to TeePublic, and you can pick up some Cantina Cast swag with the logo. That certainly greatly appreciated if you do that. And then on a personal note, I want to plug something real quick. I actually picked up this shirt that I'm wearing tonight, which is, you can see, Darth Nihilus, if you can see that. This is a guy over on Instagram that I've been following. He does some really great designs. It's called Rebel Scum Apparel. RebelScumApparel.com is the website address, but you can find him on Instagram. If you go over to shop, he's got lots of really cool stuff in there. He's got like some Taylor Swift stuff where you've got the 1977 and just a boatload of different kinds of shirts. There's all kinds of great stuff on here. So thanks so much for sending the shirt. And go out and support him. He's got some really good stuff out there. Definitely worth it if you're a collector of Star Wars apparel, as I and Jonesy are.
That's right. And thanks to everyone who joined us in the live stream tonight as well. So Steph, Kathy, Sky, Qui-Gon J, Skywalker's Academy, One Up versus CPU. We see the folks in the background. Please do stop and say hi. But thanks for coming out. We appreciate you joining the conversation with us.
Yeah. Let's see. Programming notes, just quickly. I'll probably do this again at the very end. But Lauren has just released her Defy of the Storm breakdown. I think it clocked in about 40 minutes, 35, 40 minutes-ish, somewhere on there. If you're not, if you don't want spoilers, she's got you covered in the first 5 to 10 minutes, just kind of talking about high level, her initial thoughts on it. And this weekend, on top of the Patreon show that we've had to postpone, which is Skywalker and the Sith, or is it Sith and the Skywalker?
Sith and the Skywalker. Right.
Sith and the Skywalker. And so that'll be a breakdown of technically 2 issues, but we're going to go back and cover 4 total because there's some backstory. But that involves Luke Skywalker cleansing one of the red crystals that he comes across. So that'll be a fun dive into that. And so if you're not really up on the comics, we got you covered there. And then to continue with that same night, actually prior to that show, Laura and I are going to be breaking down the first 4 issues, I should say, of the High Republic comic by Marvel. This is all coming in phase 3. So some really good stuff there. I've been really all over the moon about the 4th issue because of the way it ended. But then there's also a surprise return visitor in there, which I won't spoil, but somebody that Jonesy and I were talking about back when we were covering the Rising Storm. We were speculating about whether or not this person was truly gone or could they have lived. You kind of could probably go where I'm going now with this, but I'm excited that they're back. Let's just say that. So we'll be talking about that as well. So lots of comic book coverage coming here on Sunday night's shows.
Yeah, and with the High Republic too, I know social media, a lot of people have been posting about what was announced today as well. A new audio drama from Kevin Scott. So super exciting about that one. To follow up to Tempest Runner, Tempest Breaker, right? So pretty exciting stuff coming. That was a really cool audio drama. And excited to get a follow-up on that one. Yeah.
And actually, not spoiling anything, because we are going to talk about it Sunday, but the way issue 4 ends, actually issue 3 technically, you can kind of see where it's starting to lead into Tempest Breaker, because now you have Lorna D, Avar Chris, and Keeve Trennis all teaming up together. So we called it. We said she's got a bone to pick with this Markion Rowe kid. So we'll see where that goes at some point here.
Yeah, so super exciting stuff. So you're going to want to stick around for it. And yeah, great job, Lauren, pumping out great content over there. Her Republic Commando episode was doing fantastic as well. A lot of great feedback there. So be sure to like her videos, give her a comment, leave her a thumbs up, and drive that engagement up so we can get more people to see her content too.
Yep. All right. With that, why don't we dive into our episode tonight, which is The Return. I guess let's just cover our initial thoughts. I guess, what did you think about the episode? How did it make you feel? What did the runtime come in? I forgot to check that out. Was it like in the 25-minute mark, 35-minute mark-ish?
Yeah, I think all these are about the same. I think these are on that 24, 26 mark. So, which I think is actually working pretty well for the series. It feels dense enough. And I think we've even seen with that short runtime, quote unquote short or normal runtime, like with episode 1, it felt a lot longer than that. So yeah, I think this is the right cadence. I think this is the right pace for all of this. And this was a very, as I said at the top of the show, it was a very satisfying episode for me. It wasn't a lot. This was very much we're back to Barton IV, which had the same kind of feel. It feels like like the Outpost, right? That was the episode from last season. And it feels like to come back and follow up and be back here just makes so much more sense. And you get some of the parallels, and then you get the stuff with Hunter and Crosshair. And was it as deep as maybe we were deep down hoping for? No, it wasn't, right? But also, that would be probably a little out of character if they went too far into it. And the way they went about it, I thought, was a lot of fun. And there were some comedic moments there too, especially with Echo, seeing Echo and Omega. And remember the last time that Omega and Echo got together? He was very stiff. She kind of hugged him, but he didn't know what to do. This time he's on one knee. He's embracing her. He's got a smile on his face. Yeah. It was just so cool to see a different, like just where Echo has come over the last season or so, and engaging with the team, and then him kind of being almost like the narrator of sort between Hunter and Crosshair in some way. So it was just very satisfying. I thought this was a really good episode. Nothing crazy over the top, but a lot of symmetry with what we had last season, and getting the moment with Crosshair alone in the bunker, I think was really important to see as well. Yeah.
It was a good episode. I enjoyed it. There was, there was some moments there at the beginning we were kind of building up to it. I want to talk about that here in further detail. But then we had a good amount of action. We had the big creature. We heard Wrecker say what we all think. Why is there always a big? I forget the line, but
right.
Why is there always a big monster right in every episode? Which I think was great. But yeah, the episode was fine. The title itself, The Return. I had a couple of ideas in here. It was basically the return of Omega to Pabu. It was a return of the team in some ways together with, minus, Tech, of course. Return to the Outpost is the title works there. The return of the Ice Worm, return of the Vulture, the Ice Vulture, the return of Pabu Sushi. We're not talking about the Pabu Sushi enough. I mean, don't get me, I'm looking at, there's actually an editing mistake I found too. At one point, I know this is why you came here, guys. There's a full plate of sushi in front of Wrecker, and in that same scene, they cut away and they cut right back again, and now there's like 3 rolls that are missing. So either he's really fast at just swallowing those things down, or they didn't edit that. But I am watching all the sushi in the series. One thing that was interesting, this entire episode was done with technically 3 voice actors, although one of them is Ben Diskin, who does AZ3. Right. But otherwise, this whole episode was all freaking D. Bradley Baker and Michelle Long.
Michelle Long, yeah.
What an amazing thing to think about, and to think that, you know, D. Bradley Baker sitting there doing all of the voices in one setting, right? Just going back and forth. It's just, I mean, they must have recorded this in a small amount of time, probably less time than it takes us to do this episode, if I'm not wrong.
I would love to see what his contract is, like for how many voices he does and like how many characters, and like if he gets a little extra for that.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
That'd be fun.
So let's talk about, I guess, I wouldn't say it's a criticism, but you know, there's a moment in there later on, and we'll get to this part, but later on when he's talking about Hunter says, you know, he's not spoken to Hunter. She says, you haven't spoken to Hunter yet. I guess what bothers me is that they were on that moon, right? And they were both there. They had the awkward moment and they were all staring at each other. I was expecting to either have picked up right from that moment or they would have hashed something out. And I guess the way I'm reading this episode is none of that happened. So then I started thinking, okay, so what did they do? Did they just very silently turn around and walk back in the ship and then he just walked in? Did they have any conversation? And not to mention, this will kind of feed right in, kind of launch right into the breakdown of the episode. I mean, we start back on Pabu. So I'm expecting a day has passed, a couple days maybe. Maybe not a couple days, but I get that was Omega's kind of first night back on Pabu. That's why she got such a good amount of sleep. And of course, Crosshair's already left early in the mornings. He's avoiding people. He heads down to go do target practice. But again, no conversation was had anywhere amongst all of that. And I guess to your point earlier, maybe I'm expecting too much from these meatheads, from these soldiers that aren't in touch with their internal personal feelings, can't really express themselves in all the right ways. But I would expect that, you know, I was expecting them to have some kind of a conversation about, hey, you did this to us, you did that. And we get that a little bit later. And I think the way they're probably playing this out is, I'm trying to talk myself off the ledge here just a little bit, is we're probably going to get bits and pieces of it. It's not going to be a one kind of conversation and they make their piece, or at least they go about and think about what to do next. It's probably going to be piecemealed, and it probably suits their character better, but it probably does better for the show itself, rather than giving to all this all at once. If they kind of just give us bits and pieces and let them reconcile over the course of 2-3 episodes, maybe that actually works out better for the pacing, rather than us sitting down and having a table conversation of them, you know, getting all their feelings out kind of thing, which is what I want. I don't know that it translates or makes for good television, though. But what do you think on that?
Actually, I think this is about as much exposition as we're going to get in conversation between the guys. I think they've settled it. And if we've learned anything from the Bad Batch, once something is settled, it's kind of done and over with, and they move on. So I'm kind of thinking we're probably done, actually. I'm with you. I'd like some more of that. But I think where they left this with the tension and with Hunter and Crosshair looking at one another after helping him out of the worm and all of that, when they got the beacon back up and running, and then the discussion that they had, and both of them admitting, you know, that they wish they would have done some things differently. There's a lot of regret. There's a lot of remorse, shame, you know, but the encouraging words of Hunter kind of speaking for the entire team, I think. I took it as that was kind of the conclusion, and they were all done, and they can start to build trust again. And I think all of the distrust we saw throughout this episode was just, you know, I think that was it playing out on screen for us, but it was all more or less contained in this one episode. I think I'm okay with that. I think generally I'm okay with that, because I think they did it well enough here, and I think they went through and they, you know, the pushing and the shoving, and, you know, and even, what's his name? I keep wanting to call him Tech. It's not Tech.
Echo.
Gosh, yeah, Echo. Man, we love Echo. But anyway, like Echo's comment of, hey, there's no blood this time. I laughed. I loved it. It was just great. The first time I saw it, I burst out laughing because I just wasn't expecting it.
Yeah.
But it was true, right? I mean, they do this thing, especially Hunter and Crosshair, and so they finally reconciled that, and, you know, they got to a better place. And I think for them, that's just how they work it out, and they, you know, they did it this time, and I have a feeling it's kind of over and done with now.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. You know, and as far as record goes, right? I mean, kind of going back to the episode, you know, when they cut away from, and we see Hunter and Wrecker up on the top, and they're kind of watching down on, you know, they're probably making sure that Omega and Crosshair are safe. They don't trust Crosshair as much.
Right.
But, you know, Wrecker makes that comment. I think we even said as much in our Final Hype episode about, you know, what would this look like for them? Because because Omega's okay, that's enough for Wrecker. Like, I don't think he's really thinking about this anymore, right? Hunter's coming at it from a different perspective, and in terms of that father figure, not really trusting him, probably more for Omega's sake than their sake. I don't think he's so concerned about the team dynamic or, you know, how they're going to fit in. I think he's just really concerned that he's going to betray them again, and that could mean a risk to Omega. But yeah, I mean, Hunter or Wrecker's like, yeah, I'm good with it. So I don't suspect that we'll see anything from them. Maybe this is all we get from Hunter. I think the only other beef that I still have, and we barely touched on this, I mean, it happened very briefly here, was just the conversation about Tech. And, what does that mean to Crosshair, right? Knowing that they were there to save them and he lost his life as a result. That conversation I don't think has been had yet, and I would expect them to still have something more. I hope that's not all we got. This is all we're going to get, because I really want to hear what that sounds like.
I'm with you. I think it would be a good thing for us to hear. I did like that we had everybody doing the exact same thing, though, and there was almost that moment of silence. Everybody's head just lowered and dipped, and you really did feel that. It was brief,
it was reverence,
and I get that. But yeah, there was a lot of reverence there. There was, I mean, you could feel the void, and you could almost feel like the ache that every one of them feels in their own way of the loss of the team, right? And so, is it enough? Is it sufficient to quell our own grief? I guess maybe not, but I think for this team, they don't really know how to. They don't dwell in grief a lot of times, or at least they don't do it. They definitely don't do it openly, but. Their job is to keep moving, and they've got a job to do. And I think for them to keep soldiering on, so to speak, makes a lot of sense. And I think Omega's a big part of that too. And to your point about Wrecker, yeah, if she's okay and if she trusts him, and this goes back to I think where the hill you've been dying off for a long time. Then if it's good enough for Omega, it's good enough for Wrecker, right? And he's fine with it. And I think once you earning Wrecker's trust back is much easier to do than anybody else's, because he's like, well, but he did okay this time. I mean, or he did two things in a row. That's fine, right? So, and I think for Wrecker, I think that fits the character pretty well. And I think overall, it helps too. I think it helps break and chip away at the ice for Hunter as well. Even though Hunter might view Wrecker as a bit naive, I think it does help soften some of that and and start to melt the ice a little bit there for Hunter too.
Yeah, I think so too. That if Wrecker, even though Wrecker is kind of a meathead, because he is coming along, it's easier for Hunter to kind of get on board as well.
And Hunter recognizes that his own heart is not necessarily it's a bit of a hardened thing a little bit, except around his team and around Omega, and he wants to protect. But I think he also sees that Wrecker does have that boyish charm and that boyish love for his team and everything. And so they've lost so much. Why would we want to willfully get rid of this one if it's even got a chance of working out?
Yeah.
And Crosshair feels and seems different. Hunter just has to accept it, right? And actually get himself to that place to where he actually believes it.
So on the topic of sushi, One Up versus CPU in the chat says, lots of omega acids in sushi. So there you go. I think that was in the databank. I'm almost positive I saw that in the databank today. Yeah. All right. So, excuse me, Omega waking up. She's got the Tuca doll. That was great to see. And finally got some sleep, got some good rest. Of course, Crosshair left, and she's playing the mom figure in a lot of ways now in this episode. I don't know if you noticed that, but
yeah, she
gets up and one of her kids is missing, and she tells the other boys like, "Hey, what happened?" They're like, "Oh, he went down," and she says, "Well, I'll go check on him because you dummies are not right." That's a very motherly thing to do. Go check on the kids to make sure that they're okay and all that. But I just love that aspect of her, and there's another great example of that later on once they get to Barton IV. Crosshair, we talked about him. He's kind of doing his thing, right? Trying to take his mind off. At the same time, practices, doing target practice because his, aim is down. We get to see AZ3 for a very brief moment. He makes us the comment about he's shooting at 53%. So we get that kind of come down. Any thoughts around, we've been asking why his aim, why does he have the shaking hand? Why is his aim down? I don't think this episode really gave us anything from there, but any other thoughts around that yet? Or you think it's still going to be teased out and we'll find an answer later down the road?
I really hope we get something of an answer. I'm a little bit concerned we're maybe not going to, but yeah, this will continue to be teased out. And again, it's just a what's the word? It's just something that Crosshair's gonna have to deal with, and it's going to come back. I'd like to see him be able to recover a little bit of his aim, a little bit of that old confidence so that it's not 50%, he's up at 75 or 80%, but there's still a risk, but you have a little more confidence. And we saw this definitely when they're fighting the worm. He's not making the shots, and the worm's he's a big target. I mean, that thing is not small, and he was still missing pretty wildly. So clearly it's a malady for him that's going to stick around. And I don't know how much we'll get to. I think Hemlock who would it come from? I guess would it come from Hemlock, or would it come from Emery Carr, maybe, or even Nala Say? Like, who would we actually get that exposition from?
I would expect it to be from Crosshair. Like, I think he probably knows what's going on, or like we said, if it's a result of the experiments that were happening to him, he probably felt like, hey, I'm not myself, and he could, feeling the after effects of the experiments and all that. I would think it'd probably come from it. I don't know that we would get it from anybody else but him. So, time will tell, I guess.
Yeah, I guess the curiosity I have is what were they trying to accomplish with the experiments? Were they just was it just a result of torture, or were they actually trying to get something out of the clones where they have injected the stuff where we've seen them be sick, we've seen them develop tics, we've seen them develop other maladies. And so what is it that they're trying to accomplish, or is it just punishment? I think that's the part that maybe Hemlock and company might have a little more thing. You have Crosshair's perspective is important, I think, without question, but there's something else in there. I wonder if Crosshair even knows what they were trying to do.
Yeah, maybe not. He may just know the after effects, right? Or felt the after effects of it all. So this, we talked about on the last episode that there was something about, or at least on the last breakdown, that there was something about, Crosshair saying, oh, surely they're dead now, when Omega wanted to go find Hunter and Wrecker. And we felt like that was him kind of like trying to avoid all of this. And we see this as a prime example, like everything that's happened up into the very beginning of this episode. He's clearly been avoiding Hunter, clearly been avoiding Wrecker, doesn't want to have those conversations. It's an uncomfortable conversation to have. And so what does he do? He tries to go back and bury himself, distance himself by doing target practice. And I like that, because I felt like this was an extension of that. He got up before anybody else did, left, and went to go do something far away from everyone else. Again, just constantly still trying to, avoid this conversation that he knows is inevitable, but doesn't want to have it anytime soon. So I did enjoy that. When Omega comes down there, he has this line where he's talking about being a good sniper. And he says, being a good sniper is more than just looking through a scope. It's about patience, reading the environment, and knowing when you've got eyes on you. And all of that feels like it's probably a metaphor for how he's dealing with all this,
Right.
Is he, about the patience, right? He's probably waiting. He's being patient about it. He doesn't want to go rush in and say, let's have a, kind of a big conversation about this. He's reading the environment. He wants to kind of feel how Wrecker, how Hunter are reacting, as everybody else, Echo's on his way. How's Echo going to react to me? So I kind of got that's where it came from. Otherwise, it's just that whole comment seemed kind of out of place, that he would be teaching her how to be a sniper right there on the spot. It felt like it was more of a metaphor there for what he's dealing with and how he's dealing with all of this.
Oh, sure. I mean, and Omega kind of asked, and if we think, I thought about that the second and third time I watched it, was I think this is the one character we haven't had any kind of training for Omega from.
Yeah, that's true.
At least I didn't remember, right? So it wouldn't be surprising that this is the last, the last one to get some tidbit of knowledge from, to be able to round out what she's able to contribute to the group in some capacity. And also a way to continue relating and connecting to Crosshair in some way too. And getting him to talk, I think, is basically what Omega's trying to do more of, is just get him to be open. And I'm actually kind of impressed with Crosshair. He's been more expressive with Omega. He's been a little bit more honest. He's still got the chippy comments, but at the same time, there's a little bit of that banter developing too, right? And you almost feel like Crosshair is coming out of his shell. It's a different Crosshair than we've ever seen across 2+ seasons now, starting to emerge, which he's still very much himself, but it's just something unique about him. And you are feeling a shift in him to where he can truly embrace what the squad means and what Omega means to him as well, especially now that they've been through some stuff together. But I like that they're developing that rapport. But again, Omega just getting him to communicate and talk, telling him he's got to talk, he's got to be willing. It's like going to therapy, right? You've got to be honest, open, and willing. It's the HOW method, right? So you got to do the three things if you want to make any kind of progress. So I'm glad this is starting to come out. I'm glad that Crosshair is responsive to it, because he's a character that you would not expect any of this from, but I think it's natural development here. And, this is what he wants. If he truly wants to make a difference, which I think he does, I think he wants to be there. He's afraid to be there. Then you've got to go through this, and you have to go through that uncomfortable part.
Yeah, on that note, when Echo shows up, he did the little hug with Omega, almost stabbed her in the back with the screwdriver, but, what do you expect? But, Crosshair says, what, no hug for me? Like, he's almost like there's humor there. Like, I don't know that he would have done that in any of the seasons or the episodes that we've done. And
Echo didn't say no.
He didn't say no. He said, depends on how good your intel is, which we learned sucked because he didn't know anything. So I guess he's not getting this hug. But, there's a little chuckle after that from Crosshair,
exactly.
in response to it. So he is opening up a little bit. Maybe not to Hunter, right? Maybe not to Wrecker, but at least with Omega and somebody like Echo who, hasn't really been as close. But
Echo's a little disarming.
Well, let's just end the show right there. Thanks, guys. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next week. But
you trained me well, my friend.
Yeah, no, exactly. There's more on that later though. We'll talk more about his. There's another comment that comes up here in a little bit, and then so they go through the whole Tantus debrief thing, which there really wasn't a lot that came out. I mean, it was more affirmation, confirmation of what we already knew and suspected as much from Tantus in the first 3 episodes. They're experimenting on clones. There's nobody's allowed in the vault area except Palpatine, Nala Se, and Hemlock. Emery, Omega pipes in, says Emery's a female clone, just like herself. And then Crosshair's intel is like, it's really nothing. It's like, I don't know what you expect from me. I was a prisoner. I think they were probably looking for anything he knew prior to him being the prisoner, right? That kind of intel, which I think, we got some of it because he took him to the outpost, right? So it did pay off there. But when he says that, Hunter kind of throws a glance over at him, and I think this is where we get the first suspicion that Hunter is suspicious of of what Crosshair knows and what he's not telling him, which I think is a very natural reaction, given that he kind of betrayed them when they last saw him. So I think all that tracks and certainly makes sense.
Yeah, and Hunter and Wrecker are starting to realize that this stuff doesn't work anymore. I think is part of what you're seeing here is that they have to be more transparent about what they're getting into because the stakes just keep getting raised. And now with Omega having been taken, I mean, Hunter's just, for lack of better words, just all ears, right? His senses are really heightened, although he didn't detect a worm for whatever reason. The one time his enhanced senses fail him is when you have a gigantic worm in a snow planet. But setting that aside, I mean, he's wary of him, right? And Crosshair, again, he's just kind of got his arms crossed, sitting back type of thing, and very resistant to even being part of the conversation and wanting to keep these walls built up and just not participate and be obstinate about it. And it's just, it doesn't work with this team anymore. And Hunter's just, I mean, and we saw this throughout the episode, Hunter's just not going to tolerate it anymore. And I think rightfully so. Crosshair's got to knock this stuff off. If he wants to be there, then be there. And, Omega is, again, kind of holding him accountable as well. And I really like the banter that they had with, little brother and things like that, too, where she kind of puts him in his place. You were talking about being mom, but, clearly she's kind of pulling
it's more big sister than, right.
Yeah, I've been here longer than you have. Maybe you've got a different set of experiences, but you guys suck at this.
I'm tired of watching you brats.
Right, yeah. You get in that room right now and you make them.
So, I have a corporate laptop. Follow me here. I have a corporate laptop that I use for work. And unless I'm on the corporate Wi-Fi, I can't get to anything. And I love that they did this with Nala Se's tablet. Like, she's not able to, they couldn't get anything unless they were on the corporate Wi-Fi. So that sets them on their course, right? They got to find an outpost. And of course, Crosshair knows the facility, one that we're all very familiar with. And, Hunter falls it back into kind of, the same patterns of like, Omega, I'm going to side, you're being benched, basically. You and Wrecker are going to stay here because he's worried. I mean, he's fallen back into where he was during season 1 and season 2 for the most part of, I don't want her out of my sights because I can't trust, that she's not going to get taken away. He's being overprotective. And I think she stands up for herself and says, look, we just got this team together and now you already want to bench me. That doesn't make any sense. Why would you do that? I love the fact too that I'm jumping a little bit here ahead, but kind of going back to the Crosshair and Omega and the dynamic and how that's changed. He acknowledges that Omega is certainly capable. Like she is very capable, but he says, you are still just a kid. Right. So there is, there's that balance there. I love the fact that Hunter did finally give into it. I figured he would. I mean, it'd be kind of really silly at this point, given all that she's done. And we've went on and on about all the amazing things that she did in the first 3 episodes alone, all the different roles, all the different hats that she wore. That probably still wasn't enough for at least his initial gut reaction of like, no, you're not going, you're staying here kind of thing. But I did appreciate that he did turn that around.
Yeah, she's been gone from the team long enough now to where he's, reverted back to some of his old behaviors. But I like that Wrecker and Echo were the ones to look at him and nod and say, she's right. she's a part of this team. We are better as a group. There's no reason for us to split apart now. And I hope this is the theme for the rest of the season, that we're better together than we are split apart. There's times where you have to split and take multiple objectives, but doing it willfully for no real good purpose, I think this is one of those times. And again, I think his main reservation of not wanting to bring her is that all of a sudden Crosshair, who's back, he can't really trust, is going to lead them, to some remote facility, and he's being cagey about the details of that too, right? So you can understand where he's coming from, and you can't really fault him. But I like that the rest of the team, and I like that Hunter recognizes the rest of the team has a voice, right? It's not just his way or the highway. As the leader, it is now a community effort, and everybody's voice, does matter here, and that they're going to back. The side of the team is not necessarily backing Omega; it's just backing the team idea behind it all.
Yeah. Let's see. There's a question in here from my Star Wars guy. Says, "I'm confused. Haven't we been to Mount Tantus? How big of a mystery is it all of a sudden?" Yeah, I mean, we have. We've been there, but they don't know how to get back to it. It was, Omega and Crosshair were taken there in secrecy. This is of the highest level of secrecy as far as the Empire is concerned. There are a couple different ways. I actually have a theory that came to me in this episode about how they're going to get to Tantus. So I won't spoil it now. I'll probably save it for the very end, quite honestly, unless I just can't hold it in much longer and spew it all out. But
that's where my money's going to be.
It sounds like you've done a show with me before.
We've done a couple. Yeah.
We've done a couple. So going along back to the story there, we get the big brother, the little brother comment about her being older, and we said as much. I'm glad they finally just kind of said it and called it out, threw it out there. And Crosshair chuckles again. He kind of makes a little chuckle after she says that, which I thought was really great. I like
the little pat on his shoulder too, right? I mean, the physical, you can't discount things like that, right? When it comes to building bridges of physical contact with people and bridging that gap, that physical gap, right? And that he didn't flinch or anything. He almost welcomed it, I think, in some way. Mm-hmm. So those are really important moments. They're really small and they're tiny, but those add up really quickly, I think.
Yeah. It's all chipping away at the armor there. And speaking of armor, this is when Wrecker shows up with his armor, which I think did a lot for Crosshair, to knowing that, they kept the armor around, him seeing it, and he was thinking, holy crap, like, these guys don't hate me. Why would they have kept this around? This meant something. Or I meant something to him. But I thought it was a good moment. Again, another kind of a chip at the armor, breaking down the walls a little bit for him.
Right. Absolutely. I liked it. I mean, and he kind of gave it to him a bit of, brusquely, which is kind of Wrecker's MO. And he, wasn't going to get all mushy about it, so to speak. So, but I like it. It was like, we kept this for you. It's yours. It's the only person it's meant for is you. And there's always that hope, right? And I think for Crosshair, he views that, at least from Wrecker's perspective, and I think even Hunter allowing it, is that, okay, they kind of had a hope I would come back and that they would do this for me is a really big gesture. And I think that wasn't lost on Crosshair.
Yep. All right, we get to, they end up taking off to Barton IV. Of course, that's the setting for the Outpost, an episode that came out, that season 2?
Yep. Yeah. Well, last season, right?
Season 2, right. And this is where a lot of the doubts start to settle, right? No life signs from space. They're getting no heat signatures from space. There's no comms that are being out there. And I think this is at this point, this is where Crosshair's like, okay, are we being set up here, right? Is he taking us here to a place where, this sounds too fishy. There's nothing going on yet. This is supposed to be the place where we're going to be able to plug in this data pad. Surely they've destroyed all the infrastructure, which of course they didn't, but that's, that wouldn't make for a very dramatic episode if they did.
Right.
Once they get there, we got to see the return of the Vulture. We spent some time talking about the Vulture and just the kind of the symbolism of the Vulture and being representative of Crosshair at the time, the scavenger, the survivor kind of aspects. And I did love it, the symbolism again of the Ice Vulture showing up when he showed up. And, him taking that last look of the Ice Vulture at the very end, just to jump ahead, and that Ice Vulture leaving. I almost took that as, okay, that old Crosshair is really gone at this point, at this episode. Right. But I did appreciate the fact that they brought that back for this one.
Yeah, it's good symmetry again. It's that idea of closure. And I think for Crosshair, going back to the Outpost, I think gave him a lot of closure in a lot of different ways. So I think the Ice Vulture was definitely a way to put a nice little bow on it.
Yeah. We got some more exposition about the sensors. Apparently they were out there originally, I guess, to keep out the primitive folk who I think in reading between the lines, Crosshair killed,
Well,
had run out.
Yeah, these were the raiders, of course, that they were always, pushing back, and of course that they were chasing with Mayday and all of that. So, but you can imagine there were a bunch of other things too. But yep, yeah, he definitely had a part in icing those guys.
Yeah, and then your part where they were icing those guys. So you're on a roll tonight. There was that little bit in there where they started kind of shoving each other, and if you're scared, why don't you wait on the ship, kind of thing. Again, it's kind of like brothers fighting. Just picking at each other for the most part until Echo steps in and says, "Hey, kill each other later," kind of stuff, which I thought was great. And this is where I thought Omega went into mom mode after Hunter walked off. I mean, she walked up to Crosshair and was like, "I said, talk to him, not argue with him." Right. And he's like, "He started it." I mean, it was like mom had just stepped in and broke these two little boys up that were about to, start throwing down punches.
Yeah, and you kind of get it from Hunter's perspective too, especially when they get in the bunker. Crosshair's just acting weird. I mean, he's just acting. I mean, he's already a weird guy, and we get it. He's uncomfortable and things are really, tense right now. But like when he starts going in, like he's just starting to do these weird things. He's not acting like himself. He just and I think we'll talk about that here in a second. But I get it from Hunter's perspective too. He's already on edge about it, and now like we're at this place. Things aren't adding up. It's not. We thought we were gonna have to break into this place. Now it's basically wide open. This never goes well. Is this a trap? And he's just really nervous about the whole thing and just on edge.
Yeah. They get inside the bunker, and of course, Omega's got to divert the power from the sensors to the, I don't know, the infrastructure or whatever else, so they can,
Right.
jack in the data pad there. And of course, this is when we hear the noise outside, because now this has stirred up the ice worm that's coming in here. There was that really nice, conversation. I thought this was a very deep moment, a very dark moment about when Echo says that, or I think they asked, why did the Empire abandon this place? And it's like, well, they were kind of done with it. And Echo responded back saying, that sounds familiar, right? The analogy of what they did to the clones, as well as a lot of other things too, right? As soon as they're done with you, you're done. They either kill you or kill you, I guess is probably the only other option for them. But
And Crosshair, I think, related to Echo in that moment, because you see him kind of glance over, and it's that, again, these little tiny little things that just continue to add up. It was just like Echo gets it, right? He didn't have to explain it. Echo just kind of got it in a comment, and he's like, that's exactly what happened. Like, we were just discarded. We served our purpose. We outlived our usefulness, and that's it. And, Echo's okay with voicing that out there. Of course, Echo's always, pretty to the point anyway. So, but I like that Crosshair actually kind of responded to it in his own silent way. And Echo, I don't know if he even noticed it, but I think it was just a very, very small moment that, again, another step forward for Crosshair to say, okay, these guys do understand where I'm coming from.
And they held on that shot for a bit longer too than you would expect, right? As Crosshair was kind of thinking through. I mean, you got to think he was thinking about Mayday, thinking about the other people that he had met there at the outpost. Probably more than anything, what happened with Mayday, because that was pretty dramatic.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, they definitely, stayed on there. Nolan, I guess it was Captain Nolan or whatever the guy was, the Imperial that he killed. Right. All of that was kind of racing through his mind, and that kind of leads him into the next scene where he walks off and comes across all the helmets there, and they're on the floor. Again, it is out of reverence, out of respect for Mayday and the other clones that died. Those helmets don't deserve to be on the floor, just kind of kicked around and collecting dust, and so he picks them up and starts, setting them up. All of that means something. Like, again, that person, that Crosshair we all knew and loved, or I guess we knew and loved, and definitely in season 1 and before that during Clone Wars, he's in there. He's buried in there. We all know he's been in there. Omega sees it. But this, again, more things that are helping Hunter get more comfortable with him seeing this. So that level of respect for the clones and what the true mission is. Because, again, we keep talking about it. They've said it yet again in this episode. It was a little bit earlier. We didn't really talk about it, but Omega says we got to go back and rescue him. It feels like that is where this is all culminating in. But any thoughts on that, on him stacking the helmets there?
Yeah, there were a couple things. So if we remember back to the outpost, this is what Mayday would do, right? So I think it's both honoring Mayday's memory as someone who's fallen, but also honoring what he learned from Mayday in order to show respect for their fallen comrades as well, right? Their fallen brothers. Mm-hmm. Because Mayday they would all stack the helmets, and the Imperial officers hated it, right? They thought it was a waste of time. They thought that was dumb. But this meant something to them, and Crosshair kind of thought it was dumb too. But this is a trope, right? We see this in movies all the time, where your mentor, if you will do something, and then once they're gone, you respect them and you kind of keep their memory alive by doing the same type of thing, right? So it was really nice to be able to see that. I think it was also for Hunter, when he comes behind and he's watching, he did not interrupt and he quietly walked away. And I couldn't really gauge what his expression was. Maybe more curiosity or anything, and just again, what is going, like there's something just strange going. But to give him credit though, he didn't interrupt and he walked away quietly and let Crosshair have his moment at the very least with whatever was going on. I thought that was really important for Hunter not to interrupt that. But yeah, I really like that Mayday, got one last shout out, if you will, and that's why I did my little headliner of pour one out for Mayday, because the rest of this episode kind of mirrors a little bit of Crosshair and Mayday's journey a little bit with the worm and Hunter and all of that.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I think Hunter was looking at that and thinking, yeah, that's the right thing to do, and that probably made him feel better about having Crosshair on the team, knowing that Crosshair that he trusted and loved and was, for his brothers as much as he was, is still there. And so I think he just kind of walked away and said, that makes me feel better, at least, right? He wasn't doing anything nefarious or anything like that, but that would be the level of respect I would expect those guys to pay the clones. They get the data pad online, and they don't really get a lot of information. They get, and this is where my theory came from, right? Not a lot of information. They got some intel on that there were more clones than previously thought, but that's it. Didn't feel like there was a lot there. Of course, the rumblings are still happening. Crosshair and Hunter decide they're going to go out and check the perimeter. And this is where they get into it, right? I think Echo is going to spot them. I mean, that's a little bit later. But when they go out there and, they get into that whole discussion about, I know you. You're not telling me everything that, there is. What more is there, right? How did you get on the bad side of the Empire? What did you betray them like you betrayed us, kind of thing? That was all great stuff. I mean, I was eating that up because that's the conversation that I want. That's the fruitful, material, heavy, deep, emotional conversation that I felt like these guys need to have and get out there at some point. And I felt like it was probably the best time. Nobody else is around. Okay, maybe they're in the midst of danger with the ice worm, but hey, whatever, right? As long as they're having that conversation. And Crosshair didn't say anything, which I thought was really kind of crazy, right? It's probably within character. And so, what does Hunter do? He does the most natural thing, which is he pushes him even further. He says, you thought you could take back, we'd take you back, not ask questions. I don't think so. Tell me what changed. Then he shoves him, physically gets physical with him. Right. What happened, Crosshair? And then he finally comes out and says, I killed Imperial officer. I did betray them after they betrayed me, kind of thing. What do you think was going on in Hunter's mind? Like, I don't think for 1 minute, honestly, I don't think for 1 minute he thought that was the response that he was going to get. That was the reason that Crosshair was suddenly on, blacklisted by the Empire.
Yeah, I mean, Hunter's looking for an excuse to not trust him and to think that Crosshair's just out for himself, right? He thought he was the good soldier, but really he was just in for his own interest and things like that. So I think that's what Hunter's really looking for. I think there's a part of it, is he going to sell us out to the Empire? But I think at this point, there's also that element of just, fundamentally, I can't do anything that he tells me is just not going to be, it's not going to be accurate. It's not going to be right. It's going to be something that's going to get us exposed and into trouble, or is going to put Omega at risk. And so it's really just anything. And what he hopefully heard from Crosshair, though, is a little of that, but from a different spin of saying that, yes, I did betray them because they betrayed me first, which is exactly how he felt about the Bad Batch and about Hunter specifically betraying him when they turned his back on him back in season 1, right? I mean, it was the exact same scenario. And what he's saying is Crosshair's he's just looking to, I mean, at this point, at least, it may be not the same over the last 2 seasons now, but he's just looking for somewhere to belong, somewhere he feels like he can trust and feel safe and feel, a part of things, and like he's contributing to the right cause.
And have the loyalty. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but there's a loyalty aspect of it. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, exactly. And the loyalty is reciprocated, right? And so he doesn't have that anymore. And he thought he at least had it because he had a purpose with the Empire, and it was safe and secure in what they had been bred to do. And so you're absolutely right on the money, though, with loyalty. He wants this now. Feeling that loyalty in return means something to him, where I don't think he's understood that in those types of terms before.
Yeah. So they run inside at this point because the ice worm crashes through, right? And they get inside. And this is where we talked about in the last couple episodes. This season, like season 2 felt very, I think you called it out, Season 2 felt very Indiana Jones. This season is going down a Jurassic Park kind of avenue here, but this is where we get inside, and they got to get the power back on, and it's very reminiscent of Jurassic Park, where Dr. Sattler has to go out and run out to the generator, and she even primes the switches the way Wrecker primed the switches as well, or the breakers or whatever it was, which I think Omega would be Lex, because she's the one that actually gets the power grid up, or at least in this case gets the sensors back up. But all that's great stuff. I hope they're doing that on purpose. But Hunter and Crosshair and Batcher decide they're going to go out and try to draw the worm out past the sensors. Echo goes out to kind of spot them, but I think he's also just making sure that they're not going to kill each other while they're out there, because he kind of knows that they're not really on the best of levels right now. And there's that comment, we'll do it together. And he says, you sure about that kind of thing? Because again, that trust is starting to really brew, especially after what had just happened. We got to hear Hunter say, then let's get to it, which he hadn't said this season. I don't remember him saying it last season. I think he said it once, but that's kind of his go-to line. Then let's get to it kind of thing. So I'm glad he said the line. They get out, and this is where we're going to kind of speed through a little bit of this, because again, it's more of the action stuff, and we're not going to really do it justice. But this is where Hunter falls through the ice into one of the worm tunnels that's kind of down below, and we get Wrecker's line of why is there always a huge monster? It was really great. That made it into the Star Wars data bank, I think, as well, for his character or something. If you go look at the episode guide, that line is being called out there.
Nice.
Hunter goes outside, and he goes underground while Crosshair and Batcher, they run out past the sensors. They get the power back on, of course. The sensors are turned up right at the last second, and of course the ice worm just stays there and can't get past the sensors, turns away, and heads back. And so all that's great. I mean, it was a great little action sequence. You want to add anything to any of that?
No, I mean, there had to be trust, right? Especially if when Hunter fell through and they're going to be going along the same paths. And I think, again, to Hunter's credit, in the moment, he wants to trust Crosshair, and so he just does blindly and says, okay. And then they start taking off, and when he's there when he needs him, I mean, he kind of doubts him, like, you're going to be there, right?
Yeah.
But, and he is. And so he lowers the rifle down and pulls him out at the right minute. But they start to develop that rapport again, and that he will be there when things matter most. And, of course, after everything settles down, they fall back, and they're, breathing heavy, and the worm goes away, and they're able to look at each other and share that moment of saying, okay, I think we're going to be okay, right? Mm-hmm. And almost like a nod of thanks and a nod of recognition. And they both just feel like okay, this is a good refresh. This is a good restart for us. Like, I think we've proven ourselves, in this moment. I think in combat for this team is what speaks loud, right? Can I trust you in a fight? Can I trust you to have my back? And that's exactly what we got here.
Yeah. Steph is agreeing. She says it was a good way to show the growing trust between them. Definitely was at several moments in this little action sequence that we got. And of course, I guess I take this as now the return of the team. Like, I felt like this was kind of that galvanizing moment, although it's probably a weak galvanization because of still everything that's going on out there, but it definitely brought them together. And so much that Wrecker runs out and he hugs both of them, right? That was almost kind of like the last thing that we needed, is for him to embrace both of them at the same time.
Well, and think about the last time we saw two characters coming in from the snow on the outpost.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you think about just if you're lining the scenes up next to each other, one with Crosshair kind of half near death, to Mayday on the brink of death, and just begging for help, and no one will come out to them, right? And until someone comes away and just tells them to let there and die. And then you've got Wrecker coming out there and a firm embrace, and for both of them equal, right? So very different, similar scene, but very different result there for Crosshair. And again, things that aren't lost on him, I think.
Yeah, no, I think he acknowledges as much. So it does well for him. It does well for Hunter. It does well for the group, and certainly the dynamic of the team. We got the line in there from Echo about, hey, they didn't kill I didn't see blood this time. That's progress, kind of thing, which
that was hilarious.
That was pretty funny.
Who knew Echo had a sense of humor?
I know. He's like it's about as funny as it gets with that team. Maybe not. Wrecker's pretty funny, I guess, too.
Right.
But yeah, so again, they weren't able to get much, no coordinates for Tantus, so that's still a mystery in terms of how they're going to get there. Again, kind of reaffirming that the mission is to find the clones. At least from Echo's perspective, that's their mission, is to go back and free these clones. And he says at some point, Omega looks around after he says that, and he tells her, "You got out of there. That was the most important thing, right?" This is where my theory kicked in, because if for whatever reason they held on her for a second, and she's kind of looking around, and then they left. And I thought, okay, she's either just thinking about, yeah, I made it out of there, or she's planning something, and that's where my theory is. So we're almost at the very end here, and I'll kind of get into it. But I guess they had the big reconciliation moment here, where finally. Crosshair comes out and says, "Look, Hunter, I, thought I knew what I was getting into with the Empire, and I thought I was just being a good soldier. We, of course, the phrase that is so synonymous with Crosshair is, good soldiers follow orders kind of thing. This is really what he was saying, and Hunter does a good job of saying, look, nobody really understood what to expect, what was happening back then, except Palpatine. Palpatine knew everything, but outside of Palpatine and Masameda, they." Nobody really knew. And so, yeah, I think he was just trying to say, look, man, we all make mistakes. The best that we can do, and I'm paraphrasing here, of course, is we all make mistakes. The best we can do is try to do better kind of thing. And that was his way of kind of, I think, forgiving Crosshair for what he's done, especially everything else that had happened in the episode. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bit of absolution there, too, for the team. But it also was a good moment for Hunter of showing leadership. I think forgiveness, to your point, a little bit there, too. But also, like, hey, we're all just trying to figure this out. Like every day is a new day. We have done a lot of things that we're not super proud of either. We worked with a crime syndicate more than once, right? We worked with someone who sold us out. Like we were all making decisions that we don't like. And Crosshair called him out before, right? When they were kind of pushing and shoving, he was saying like, you're mad at me. Like Crosshair's telling Hunter, you're mad at me because I got Omega out and you didn't, right? I risked everything to give you a warning to don't do this, and you did it anyway. So you're angry with yourself at the same time. And I think this conversation brings that back full circle to where Hunter has acknowledged that, and he didn't say it as much. And again, this is where these guys just don't do this at this level, but he's basically saying like, look, we're all doing the best we can, and we're going to make mistakes. We're going to learn from them, but we're going to do it together. Right. And I think that's the theme that's developing here. And I think this is what Omega's been wanting the entire time, is like this family needs to stay together for it to be effective. And because they are all better together, and they've already lost one, right? And every mission is a risk to lose another one. And so we are all better. Live every moment for what you can.
Yeah. He also said the line in there about, I've done things, I've made mistakes. If I'm Hunter, I'm kind of reading between the lines on that and thinking then, okay, you've killed a lot of innocent people, which I think he's probably said as much. So again, none of that I don't think fazed Hunter. I think he probably expected or suspected that was the case, especially serving the Empire and knowing what he knows now about the Empire. It's very likely that anybody in that position would have done something similar or committed horrendous acts of violence in some way. So I mean, I kind of took this as well as like, this was the moment that they were a team. And then this kind of leads into, the ice vulture flying away, like we mentioned at the very beginning, is symbolic of, that part of Crosshair, or that person that Crosshair was the last time he was here on the outpost, is gone, has flown away. So yeah, I don't know that we'll see a drastically different Crosshair, maybe more to back where we were during season 1, or definitely during the Bad Batch or the Clone War episodes. But I don't suspect that we'll see a huge change or a huge shift. Maybe with Omega, I think that continual to play out a little bit more, but for the most part, at least he's back to where he was, I think.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good assessment. I think is it all going to be the same as it used to be? No, there will be little differences, but I tend to agree. I think this is a step forward. We will not look backwards necessarily anymore. We'll just continue to move forward as a team, and there might be some little challenges along the way or some sidelong looks, but I think from a trust standpoint and from where the story's going, I think we've resolved this for the most part. Although I do hope there's some other things that come out.
Yeah. So I guess maybe we'll end on just kind of the theory, and I kind of want your thoughts, because it's half baked, honestly. But there was something about Omega when Echo said, "You got out," and the question that came to my head was, how far will Omega go to ensure that they do get back to Tantus, so that they can get everybody rescued? We know the bounty hunters are coming up. It's APB right now as far as Omega is concerned. Right. But do you think that she would willingly turn herself over to one of the bounty hunters, knowing that she is going to be returned to Tantus, and there's nothing that's going to happen to her because she's been singled out? She is like, she's safe, right? They can't hurt her. They're not going to kill her. So, could she put a tracker on herself in some way, or could she figure out a way that, okay, the only possible solution, the only possible way that we can get to Tantus is for me to go there, have them track me there in some way, whatever that is. And that would ensure that at least everybody knows where to go. And, then it becomes like an Ezra thing all over again, where everybody's doing it for Omega. And kind of like we were speculating that everybody would be doing this for Omega for all the things that she had done. But on top of that, obviously taking down the Empire and freeing all the brothers, right? It serves everyone's purposes at that point. But do you think Omega would go that far and willingly giving herself up again for that?
Yeah, basically using herself as bait, right?
Yep.
I mean, this is a tried and true way of doing things, right? And if people don't have to like it, people don't even have to know about it, and she could definitely do it. And she's strong-willed and strong-headed enough that where I think that's I think it's a very real possibility. Where the show is going is I would probably lean towards more that, Bane is successful in maybe picking her up and actually securing the asset this time and bringing it back, and they have to find it somehow they're able to track that back. But I think it's like 50-50 at this point. I think it would make sense for her to give them the breadcrumb trail and give them a more direct path to be able to do that. I think it's very possible. So I think I don't think you're off the mark as far as what's possible at all.
All right, we'll see if that turns out to be true. Hey, Mike joined us. Love that Hunter, always a leader, was able to extend the olive branch to Crosshair. Yeah, I mean,
I like that he was able to reward Crosshair having courage, right, to actually make the comment, stop him, and actually engage and start the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And so Hunter reciprocated. I think there was a great moment between the two.
Yeah. All right. Well, next up we have infiltration, then extraction, then bad territory.
Yeah, it kind of all seems like they could all be talking about Tantus again, I suppose, right?
Yeah, they could be, but I think we're too early now at this point.
Yeah, I kind of think so too, but we'll see where this goes. But I think we're getting into bounty hunter territory, to your point before. I think we're coming up on Fennec Shand and Cad Bane here pretty soon.
Do you think we're going to get the Pabu invasion and infiltration, or do you think that's later?
Oh, that's a really good question. Yeah, I mean, it would have to at least be an episode or two away, because there hasn't been anything obvious, at least, to track them back to Pabu yet. So I would still expect that there is some sort of mechanism that the Empire would actually come back and say where they found them. So I'm thinking we're still a little ways away from that. I would like for that to be closer to a finale type of thing. That's probably not a finale. It's probably kind of a mid-season cliffhanger. I guess we're getting close to mid-season, aren't we?
Yeah, we are.
This is flying by.
Season. Yeah, this is the 4th episode, so there's only 8, man.
Well, there's 15 episodes.
Oh, 15. Sorry. No, right,
yeah.
15.
But 8 to get to mid-season, yeah. So
8 to get to mid-season.
Yeah, we're only a couple of episodes away from getting to that point. So, yeah, I mean, this could be, that could be going along those lines. So we'll have to see. There's not enough of a trail there quite yet. But again, those things develop pretty quickly, and the Empire has the resources to go hunt them down. So it's very real possibility.
Yep. Speaking of hunting down, I think you wanted to hunt down some names.
I tell you what, we had a lot of people out in the chat, a lot of people engaging in the conversation. So thank you so much. CantinaCast.com/YouTube if you're listening to this and you want to come and join in the conversation. Like Steph, Kathy, Sky, Qui-Gon J, Skywalker's Academy, One Up versus CPU, Hard Countered, Risk Bayless, My Star Wars Guys, Jorge, JJ Skywalker, Paul's Collectibles, Trent, Alex, and Mike, Mr. Fisto Fury himself, Patreon members throughout that list. Thank you all so much for all of your continued support of the show. We would love it if you would like the channel, subscribe to the channel, like the video, maybe leave us a comment. Let us know what your favorite moment was. Did the interactions with Crosshair meet your expectations? So what did you think about that? Was it enough resolution? Is this going to linger, or are we done? And this is, we're not going to carry any more hard feelings moving forward, or is it something that's going to linger a little bit through the team? Let us know what you think in the comments. We'd love to hear it.
Yeah, let me know what you think of my theory too. Like, do you think Omega will go that far to turn herself over, or do you think it's just going to be something else? I'd love to hear other theories. I don't think people are talking enough about how they get to Tantus yet, because we're so focused on the team getting together. But now that we're past that, all we've got left to look for is the destruction of Pabu and getting back to Tantus. So we'll see.
Yeah, and I tell you what, another bonus question is, when are we going to see Rex? When's Rex coming back? How many more episodes until we see Rex come back? Now that we've got Echo, when do we see the captain return too?
Yeah, I would say I agree as well there. Okay, before we get out of here, once again, programming notes. This Sunday, Jonesy and I will be doing a Patreon show for the Sith and the Skywalker, which is, talking about how Luke Skywalker is able to cleanse a red kyber crystal. And it ties back to the Vader comic in a lot of ways that Charles Soule did several years ago, which is going to be fun to talk about. We actually broke that episode down. We broke those issues down. So it's fun. It was kind of fun to, as we were prepping the show notes, to think about all that stuff all over again, because it was a good story there. And then after that, Lauren and I will be on to talk about, or before that, I should say, Lauren and I will be talking about the first 4 issues of the High Republic comic by Marvel. And that is all taking place in Phase 3 with some great cliffhangers and a return of the Jedi. And I'll just kind of leave it at that as well. So all that should be a lot of fun.
It is a comic book weekend. So yeah, cantinacast.com/YouTube for the 9 o'clock show, cantinacast.com/Patreon for the 10 o'clock show, for the This Is the Way tier and above.
Yep. Okay, we'll end it there. Any final words before I get out of here?
Nope. We appreciate all the support, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, guys. We'll see you all here in just a few days.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.